Speaker, Brian Emanuel, graduated from Auburn University with a BS in wildlife science and has several years of natural resource experience with Tall Timbers Research Station and the Florida Park Service. Brian brings a wide range of knowledge and expertise to the St. Johns River Water Management District's Bureau of Land Management, where he is currently working. Brian joined the St. Johns Water Management District back in 2000 as a regional land manager, and in 2006 stepped into the role of land management program manager. In his role, he facilitates landscape scale management of the district's conservation areas with a particular affinity for the direct coordination of the district's controlled burn efforts. Personally, Brian and his family spend much time camping, fishing, and exploring the natural world, and today he's going to talk with us about managing willows and other invasive species at St. John's. So thanks, Brian.
Everybody knows that willow is a native species, and it does have its place in our marsh systems. Our desire isn't to completely eradicate it, but it has become a very large problem, as Diane showed you on her maps. This is a picture of what we would consider a fire-maintained sawgrass marsh with a low density of willows. This is recovering about, I think this was about 6 months post-fire, but this slide primarily shows that fire doesn't kill willows. It just sets them back to ground zero if there's fuel around them, such as sawgrass, to knock them back. The other player, as we've learned from the previous speakers, is the hydrology. It's apparently very important from what Diana showed us that you want water in the right place at the right time when they're seeding. So when things get out of whack, this is what we end up with. This is a former sawgrass marsh like the previous slide that willow has formed almost an entire monoculture. There's other shrubs in there as well, but it's primarily willow. Our land manager applied fire with a helicopter to this entire unit. The sawgrass, you can see, stands out because that's the only thing that burned. The take-home message from this slide is that not only does fire not kill individual plants, but it's a barrier to fire spread. It's as good as a fire line. This become a non-pyric system. We continue to apply fire to these things, hoping that we can hold that edge back until, with our collaborators, we can find out what the best way to deal with these situations to hopefully we can reverse this. It may be too late for this one, we're not sure. So this is a snapshot of what we're managing, the different community types throughout the district, with the green on the top being the uplands and the blue being the wetlands. The column to the right of the land type is the acres of each one that we manage, and then the next column is the fire return interval based somewhat on the FNA recommendations for those community types. And the last column is the annual average we'd have to be burning to maintain that fire return interval in all those community types. So out of over 420,000 acres, we should be burning almost 78,000 acres a year. And we're not, we try. Our goal, let me go back to this. The shrub marsh, although we consider it pretty much non-pyric because it's embedded in high-quality marsh, or high-quality marsh is embedded in it, we still apply fire, like I said, trying to hang on to that edge, maybe push it back a little bit as we learn from the studies that we're doing out there. Hopefully we'll be able to save it. So our overall goal is to keep marshes where fire can maintain them. Fire is ecologically the best thing for the marshes, the best tool in our toolbox. It's also the cheapest. Steve's been tracking the cost of the fire program since 1993, and our last few years we've averaged about $16 to $18 an acre, I think, for our prescribed fire program. The big marsh burns that Doug does and Pete Henn does in the upper basin, however, we can do those as low as $2 to $4 an acre with a helicopter in it, because there's not as much staff time involved in it, and it goes quickly. So this is the tracking of our burn acreage over the years, keeping in mind that land acquisition up till about 2010 was increasing our acreage every year. But you can see the best year we've had is about 50,000 acres burned, and our average is probably about 25. The odd thing is most people would think that the limiting factor to our burn program, not getting more done, is people, and it's not. We've tracked why we're not burning on days we're not burning, and the overwhelming reason is weather factors. Tying in the weather factors is that the smoke sheds that we have these days are getting tighter and tighter and tighter, so you have to have certain wind directions so you don't smoke in the smoke-sensitive areas, so it's getting more difficult, but we are trying our best. And we have a top-notch, we have all the resources and support from our executive management team and our governing board, which is a big help. So when fire won't do it anymore, or we can't get a fire in there and things are getting out of whack, as we say, this is where the herbicides come in. We have a section in the Land Management Bureau dedicated to treatments of all of our herbicide treatments. They're responsible for native and exotic. This slide shows, it breaks down into groups and some things, but Lygodium stands out, the old world climbing fern. In 2012 was when we really started going after that one and got the funding for it, with about 11,000 acres treated. As we've gotten the Lygodium into kind of a box, we know we're not going to probably eradicate it. It's hard to fight a sporophyte, but we've got it pushed into a box that we're maintaining that edge of that box and hopefully pushing it back little by little, but we've decreased the amount of Lygodium that we're treating, and now we're able to take that funding and time and start treating the willows. 2014, you can see where we're decreasing it. What we're trying to do for the foreseeable future, or the near future, is treat about 7,500 acres of Lygodium a year, and we're ramping up the willow treatments, or the shrub encroached marsh treatments, to about 5,000 acres per year. And 2015 to date, Steve put this together about 2 weeks ago, I believe, 3 weeks ago. We have been treating, like Dr. Foss said, just last week, so that's not an updated number. I think we're close to 4,000 acres now. And Randy Snyder, who's the one that's whacking the bushes out there with the helicopter contractor, has assured me that he'll reach or exceed our goal this year, unless something like the helicopter breaks or something. This is the same grouping of species, showing what we spend on it. It's not cheap. The average cost for treating marsh with the helicopter is about $120 an acre, but that varies greatly because clearcast, for instance, is highly expensive compared to doing a treatment with Mazapir, for instance. So, but the average is about $120 an acre. The priorities for our invasive plant management program, in order, our operation of the flood control systems. We're responsible for keeping the water where it's supposed to be and off of people's properties, and we have to move water around. And the floating vegetation and the hydrilla are a challenge for some of our control structures. And then the next one would be control of the ecosystem changing exotics, and in the marsh, the primary one is Lygodium. And like I said before, about 7,500 acres a year is going to be our goal for a while. And then control of exotic ecosystem changing natives, willows, and there's also some shrub problems in the Spartina marshes, but it's not willow, it's more Baccharis and Myrica, wax myrtle. So that's about 5,000 acres a year, and that's specific to the willow, the 5,000 acres, but we do treat the other marshes that are having problems. And then there's maintaining recreational access. You guys got to get your duck boats and your fishing boats out there and move around, and our constituents are very important to us because you support what we do and what we're doing for the environment, so it's a win-win. And then, of course, the control of other exotics. We do have a lot of timbered lands and uplands that have their own issues, Kogon grass, and we have tallow trees and all that. So it's a big program with a lot of dedication. Whoops. So here's an example of a treatment that we did about a year ago. This was at one time a sawgrass marsh, and it's a monoculture. So we went after this one with a Mazapir because there was no grasses underneath it whatsoever. This is a really good, Dr. Fall talked about how good those helicopter pilots are. That's good coverage. That's 100% coverage of an herbicide. No gaps, no misses. That's the C40 canal on the right-hand side of it. So if you visit that about 8 months later, it's starting to look like pickup sticks. Willows break down pretty rapidly once they're dead. There is some shrub coming back in there, but it's nothing like it was. You can see in the upper right-hand corner, this picture was taken during a controlled burn. Douglas was up there and going back probably for fuel refueling and going back to the burn site on the unit to the north. This is just a shot from a horizontal perspective of the same unit showing the dead vegetation. It looks, I'm not sure, but it looks to me like there's some floating stuff coming in, emergent stuff, hopefully good things. I'm actually supposed to go out there next week and try to see what it looks like on the ground level, because I haven't been out there since this time. That's it. If any questions about what we're doing out there to try to manage this marsh system. Clear cast twice up in the Orange Creek Basin, and they came back both times, even a double treatment of it. Randy's playing with time of year and multiple treatments in 1 year instead of a gap. He gave me a list of all sorts of herbicides that they're thinking about trying. But the picture that I showed of the 100% coverage, that was a Mazapir. And that whacks it, but we don't do that when there's grasses that we're trying to ameliorate to take the system back over. So that's the challenge. And the challenge is that we know how many acres of shrub marsh we have pretty much, give or take. But what we don't know is how many acres of areas like in River Lakes that are on the edge of blowing up, because we're not sure what makes them blow up yet other than the water levels. So mapping is important, and we're playing around with drones and such, but we're also playing around with the herbicides that won't kill the grasses, because we really want it to be a healthy sawgrass marsh. I don't think that picture of Three Forks, I don't think that'll ever be a sawgrass marsh again. Our hope is that it's a nice, very biologically diverse system, with emergent vegetation in it. But if anybody has any information with herbicide treatments that have succeeded, I know Payne's Prairie's been playing around with some different things. We plan to get together with them and start talking a little more to see if it's really working, what they've done. It looks good so far. And I think they've used several different treatments. It's a tough plant.
One of the things that we're doing at the district is we're putting together a willow compendium, and we're looking at all of the work that has been done on willows, not just Carolina willows, but all of them, to understand it. And part of it will be what herbicides have been found to work at what levels, and when was it done, how often was it done. All of that will be added too. If you'll give me your name, I'll be happy to send you a copy. I'm hoping that it'll be done by the end of the year.
Yeah, we actually work with JB on putting together.
Oh, okay, because JB's part of our group.
I have just an anecdote. In Osceola County, we redid a park, and there was a Carolina willow in it, which we rooted out. The whole stump, everything was gone except for a couple of roots. That was a year ago and a month. Okay, it's back. It's 2 feet tall. So that's how difficult it is to get rid of. You can get rid of everything, but you have to get rid of the roots too.
Yeah, we had an interesting anecdote as well as at was it Sunny Hill Restoration Area. Our manager did a burn. It was sort of the edge of the marsh type of thing where it burned into the willows and it went out, but then it embedded. It was at the edge of a drought and it didn't rain, and it got embedded in the muck for several months before we decided to flood it out because it was smoking so much. But we had willows that were completely burned underneath in the mucky soils, and they're back. They're taller than I am. So even ground fires don't exterminate them.
I'd like to know what the benefits of a sawgrass marsh. It looks to me like the sawgrass would choke out everything and not leave us with any duck habitat.
I think there's plenty of holes out there. We're dealing with areas that were traditionally sawgrass marshes. We try to restore things back to what they were, if possible. But like I said, once the sawgrass is gone, once again, partnering with NRCS, we've actually planted sawgrass up in the Ocklawaha River, our restoration area up there this year. We're experimenting to see if that will actually close the gap. Without the sawgrass, you don't have the fuel to keep the shrubs at bay. So that's the most important part of it to us. It's the fuel that carries the fire.
But can't that sawgrass choke out everything? And
There have been plenty of ducks there historically when the sawgrass marsh was much healthier than it is today. So I don't think it's an issue of choking out everything. It's a kind of a sensitive plant. Once you eradicate it, it doesn't come back in by itself, so it doesn't spread readily, from my experience.
Yeah, I think the importance there is interspersion. It's just making sure that it's not, 100% coverage of sawgrass.
We're never
And
going to see that again, I don't think.
And so I think we'd be okay there.
Yeah.